So I was looking at the latest numbers, and right now, 54% of U.S. adults read below a sixth grade level.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty staggering. And over the last 2 decades or so, daily reading for pleasure has seen this massive 41% relative decrease.
Mhm.
And the National Endowment for the Arts just recorded the lowest point for novel reading in the entire history of their tracking. So, we're basically abandoning books at this unprecedented rate.
We really are, which is, I mean, it's a staggering cultural shift, especially when you look at how quickly it all happened.
Right.
We're watching a fundamental change in how humanity spends its discretionary time.
And the paradox here is, well, when you ask people why they aren't reading, the most common answer by far is, I'm just too exhausted.
Yeah, the cognitive fatigue.
Exactly. We get to the end of a long workday and our brains just feel completely fried.
Yeah.
And the idea of sitting down with a dense novel feels like, I don't know, being asked to climb Mount Everest.
Right, you just don't have the energy for it.
No. So we collapse on the couch and we pick up our phones. We scroll through short-form videos instead because it feels frictionless.
It feels easy.
It feels like rest, right? But the question is it actually resting our brains?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the science points to a very, very unexpected answer.
Which brings us to today's Brain Candy episode from Claire and Horatio. We're taking a stack of research, ranging from cyberpsychology and cognitive science to the American Time Use Survey, to ask a question that is much, much more interesting than the old, tired, our screens rotting your brain trope.
I am so glad we're setting that baseline immediately because we really need to strictly avoid those simplistic, panic-driven narratives.
Yeah.
We are not saying print equals good, digital equals bad.
Right.
The scientific reality is nuanced. The evidence clearly shows that some forms of digital media and even certain complex video games have genuine cognitive, spatial, and educational benefits.
For sure.
Furthermore, correlation is not causation,
Yeah.
right? The decline in reading doesn't by itself prove that smartphones caused it.
Right. We aren't doing the whole screens make you stupid routine. Instead, we're looking at the mechanics of habit. We're examining how different forms of leisure physically and psychologically train our attention over time.
Exactly.
So the guiding theme for our conversation today, the question I really want everyone to keep returning to as we look at this research is this: what is your leisure training you to become?
It is the perfect lens for this material because every repetitive action your brain takes is a form of training. The brain is incredibly plastic, and it adapts to whatever environment you consistently place it in.
Okay, so let's test this idea that we reach for short-form content because we're too mentally fatigued to read a book.
Right.
The assumption is that swiping through a feed of short videos is giving our overworked brains a necessary break.
A chance to turn off.
Yeah, exactly. But we have a fascinating cyberpsychology study in our sources that looks specifically at short video applications, or SVAs.
So think TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, that kind of thing.
Right. And it turns out the rest we think we're getting might be a complete illusion.
It absolutely is an illusion.
Yeah.
What researchers found is that it's the physical act of swiping itself, so the interface design, not necessarily just the entertaining content, that alters a user's cognitive state.
Wait, really? Just the physical swiping?
Just the swiping. To understand why, we have to talk about dual process theory in psychology. Broadly speaking, human cognition operates on two tracks.
Okay.
You have type 1 thinking, which is fast, automatic, intuitive, and reactive. Then you have type 2 thinking, which is slower, analytic, deliberate, and critical.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that distinction when it comes to social media because, if I'm on my feed and I watch a really dense, say, 3-minute video of a creator brilliantly summarizing a complex geopolitical event, I'm learning something.
Sure.
So isn't that requiring type 2 analytic thinking? How can the physical act of swiping override the fact that I'm consuming educational content?
It's a great question, and it really comes down to the pacing of the interface.
Yeah.
When you watch that one educational video, you might engage type 2 thinking for a moment.
Okay.
But the study showed that the continuous, rapid swiping motion, the constant, unpredictable shifting from one context to a completely different context every few seconds, it effectively locks the brain into that fast, reactive type 1 thinking over the duration of the entire session.
Oh, I see.
Because the platform's architecture demands rapid judgment, right? Swipe or stay, laugh or skip. The interface moves too quickly for sustained type 2 analysis, so the brain actively suppresses its propensity for deep, critical thought just to keep up with the sensory input.
Oh, wow. So because I have to constantly evaluate whether to stay on a video or swipe to the next one, my brain stays in this hyper-vigilant reactive state.
Exactly. You never actually settle.
See, I used to equate mindless scrolling to eating junk food, but based on what you're saying, that analogy completely fails to capture the mechanics of it.
How so? Like, why does it fail for you?
Well, eating junk food implies a lack of effort. It's passive.
Right.
But this sounds active. It sounds less like sitting on the couch eating chips and more like, I don't know, driving a car through dense fog.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to put it.
Because when you drive in heavy fog, you're highly stimulated, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly reacting to shadows, you're gripping the steering wheel, your eyes are darting around. It is exhausting.
It really is.
Whereas reading a book sounds more like being a passenger on a train. You can look out the window, you can process the landscape, and you aren't the one managing the constant micro-decisions of navigating the vehicle.
I love that analogy. It's so accurate. And we can actually quantify how exhausting that driving in the fog feeling is for the brain. There was a clinical trial in our sources conducted on school futsal athletes.
Futsal, as in the indoor soccer game.
Yes. And it's important that they chose these specific teenage athletes because futsal is a sport that demands intense open skill performance.
What does open skill mean in this context?
It basically means the environment is constantly changing and unpredictable. So these kids naturally have excellent rapid decision-making skills and high spatial awareness. They're used to processing a lot of information very quickly.
Got it.
So the researchers split them into two groups. The control group simply watched a documentary for 40 minutes. The experimental group spent 40 minutes continuously using social media, specifically TikTok or Instagram, with no interruptions.
Which is a remarkably normal amount of time. I mean, 40 minutes is what you spend sitting in the waiting room at the dentist.
It's an incredibly common daily exposure. People do that before they even get out of bed.
Yeah, for sure.
But after just those 40 minutes, the athletes who used the short video apps showed measurable mental fatigue. When they were given a cognitive assessment called the Stroop test, the social media group had slower total reaction times and made significantly more errors compared to the athletes who just watched the documentary.
Okay, I want to make sure people understand exactly what that means because the Stroop test is fascinating. Let's actually play it out for a second.
Sure, let's do it.
Imagine I'm holding up a flashcard for you to look at.
I'm picturing it.
The word printed on the card is R-E-D, R-E-D. But the ink used to print that word is blue. The rule of the assessment is you have to name the color of the ink aloud as fast as you can.
So the correct answer I need to say is blue.
Right.
But because I'm a literate adult, my brain instantly automatically reads the text and wants to shout R-E-D. I have to actively hit the brakes on my instinct to read the word, suppress that automatic response, and force myself to identify the color of the ink instead.
It is so hard to do in practice.
It takes genuine effort.
And doing that over and over again measures your inhibitory control, right? It tests your ability to suppress an impulsive response in favor of a calculated one.
Precisely. And the reason the athletes who had just been swiping for 40 minutes performed so poorly on this test is due to the endless, rapid context switching required by those apps.
Okay, the context switching.
Right. 1 second you're watching a comedy skit, the next it's a tragedy, then a dance trend, then a political rant, then an advertisement for shoes.
Yeah, it's just all over the place.
Every single time you swipe, your brain has to completely dump its working memory and orient itself to a brand new emotional and informational environment. That requires immense cognitive load. Over just 40 minutes, it literally overloads the prefrontal cortex and depletes your inhibitory control.
So returning to the person collapsing on the couch after work, instead of resting, your brain is essentially running mental wind sprints.
That is exactly what is happening.
We're exhausting your prefrontal cortex while simultaneously telling yourself that you're relaxing.
Yeah.
But wait, if this scrolling is demonstrably exhausting my prefrontal cortex and it destroys my inhibitory control, why on earth do I find myself doing it for an hour straight, but I can't look at a printed page for 10 minutes?
It does seem completely backward.
Right. It feels contradictory. If my brain is tired, shouldn't I naturally want to stop doing the exhausting thing?
You would if your brain were purely logical and operating outside of a designed environment. But to understand why we keep swiping, even when we're mentally fatigued, we have to look at how these platforms are engineered.
Yeah.
Our sources include a comprehensive analysis connecting the data on short video apps to the research on video game monetization and the broader attention economy. The frictionless entertainment you experience on your mobile device is not accidental.
No, of course not.
It's driven by deeply embedded psychological mechanisms, primarily something called intermittent reinforcement.
Intermittent reinforcement. I've heard that phrase thrown around, but how does that actually manifest in the design of a feed?
It's the exact same psychology that powers a slot machine. Decades of behavioral research going all the way back to B.F. Skinner shows us how this works.
The rat in the box guy, right?
That's the one. If you put a rat in a box with a lever, and the rat gets a food pellet every single time it presses the lever, it eventually gets bored.
Because it knows what's going to happen.
Exactly. It only presses the lever when it's hungry. The reward is predictable. But if the rat presses the lever and gets a pellet randomly, maybe on the third press, maybe on the 10th, maybe on the first, the unpredictability completely hijacks the brain's reward circuitry.
Oh, wow.
It spikes dopamine levels far higher than a predictable reward ever could. The rat will press the lever obsessively.
Because the uncertainty is the actual hook. So on a short-form video feed, the pellet is that one genuinely hilarious or fascinating video hidden among 5 or 6 mediocre ones.
Yes. It's a variable reward structure. The modern video game industry uses the exact same architecture with things like loot boxes and battle passes. You don't know exactly what digital item you're going to get or when the really satisfying payoff will occur, so you keep pulling the lever. You can swipe.
You just want to see what's next.
Always. These platforms operate as highly integrated design architectures. They don't just happen to be engaging. They actively treat human attention as a scarce resource to be mined and extracted.
It really is an extraction industry, and our focus is the raw material. Honestly, realizing how much my attention is treated like a commodity is why I've found myself leaning so heavily into Claire and Horatio lately. Listening to their audiobooks provides this incredible quiet refuge from all that algorithmic noise.
It's a totally different pace.
And it is. It's just you, the narrator, and a single unbroken story. Nobody is trying to hijack your dopamine circuitry every 15 seconds.
That concept of a single, unbroken narrative is vital, especially when you consider what happens when the algorithmic noise finally stops. The cyberpsychology study we discussed noted a very specific aftermath to scrolling.
What happens?
When users finally close these short video apps, it frequently triggers feelings of listlessness, apathy, and a generalized negative affect.
Oh man, that is such a universal modern experience. You know that moment where you finally force yourself to close social media? You put your phone face down on the table, and the silence in the room is suddenly so loud and uncomfortable that you instinctively pick the phone right back up and open the exact same app. It's like a cognitive crash.
It is a crash, because in that hour of scrolling, your leisure time has trained your brain to expect constant rapid-fire audio-visual stimulation.
Right.
When you condition your neural pathways to receive a new dopamine trigger multiple times a minute, the quiet patience required to sit down and read a printed book suddenly feels agonizing.
Is this too slow?
Way too slow. The brain has been trained to demand a specific frenetic cadence of reward, and a book simply refuses to operate at that speed.
Let's explore that contrast then. If swiping is like running those exhausting mental wind sprints that leave us apathetic, drained, and struggling with inhibitory control, what is the actual cognitive experience of sitting down with the book? Because we know it feels different, but the science behind the how and why is what I find so compelling here.
It fundamentally changes the demands placed on the brain. We can look at the extensive research surrounding sustained silent reading, or SSR.
Okay, sustained silent reading.
Right. The beauty of voluntary reading is that it removes the threat of failure. You aren't being tested, you're reading because you chose to. By doing this, it actively trains a faculty we call cognitive endurance.
Cognitive endurance. So it's less like a sprint and more like distance running for the mind.
Exactly. It's the ability to propel yourself through complex ideas in print entirely independently. There's no algorithm pushing the next paragraph into your retinas with flashing colors and trending audio.
You have to do the work.
You have to generate the focus internally, and you have to maintain it yourself. By doing so, you are actively rebuilding the exact executive function and inhibitory control that rapid context switching depletes.
Oh, that's fascinating.
They're telling your brain, we are staying here on this page, and we are going to see this through.
And it isn't just about raw focus either. It's about what that focus is being applied to. Our sources included a study by Len Hart on adolescence and social cognitive skills that completely changed how I view reading fiction.
You're referring to the Spacian framework.
Yes. Social processes and content entrained by narrative.
It's a brilliant piece of research.
It really is.
This framework argues that reading narrative fiction is not just a simple matter of decoding letters into words and words into sentences. The process acts as a literal flight simulator for the human mind.
I love that concept, a flight simulator, because when you're in a simulator, you're sitting inside a cockpit, safely practicing complex maneuvers that would be highly dangerous or, impossible for a novice to try in the real world.
Right. A pilot uses a simulator to safely experience engine failure or terrible weather without the threat of a real-world crash.
Yeah.
When you read a novel, you're doing the exact same thing, but socially and emotionally. You're simulating the mental states of multiple characters simultaneously.
Right, you're in their heads.
Exactly. You're evaluating their desires, questioning their beliefs, and processing their emotions. You're safely navigating misunderstandings, conflicts, love, deception, and grief.
And the implication is that this internal simulation affects us socially in the real world.
It deeply affects us. Readers actively hone their perspective-taking and emotional recognition. They're practicing empathy in a low-stakes environment.
Wow.
And because the brain is plastic, exercising those mental muscles strengthens the actual neural pathways used for empathy in real life.
The study used a specific word for this translation process that I found really evocative. Transportability.
Transportability, yes.
It's the ability of a reader to deeply immerse themselves in a narrative world. It isn't just checking out of reality, it's fully checking in to another reality.
That is a crucial distinction. Transportability acts as the bridge. It's the mechanism that takes the empathy you build for a fictional character in a made-up world and transfers it into real-world social situations.
That's cool.
The more easily a reader can transport themselves into a narrative, the more their real-world affective empathy improves. You aren't just absorbing a story, you're actively exercising your capacity to understand other human beings.
When we bring all of this full circle, the contrast between these two forms of leisure is incredibly stark.
Night and day.
When we consistently choose frictionless swiping over sustained reading, we aren't just picking a different flavor of entertainment. We're fundamentally altering the environment our brain uses to adapt.
We are choosing between two entirely different physiological and psychological training regimens.
We're willingly trading a cognitive flight simulator, a tool that actively builds our empathy, our perspective taking, and our mental endurance for a variable reward loop.
Right.
A loop that the data shows actively depletes our executive function, tires out our prefrontal cortex, and ultimately leaves us feeling listless, apathetic, and unable to focus.
And this training happens subtly, day by day, hour by hour, swipe by swipe. Which brings us right back to the guiding question we established at the beginning. When you step back and look at your own habits, you have to ask yourself, what is your leisure training you to become?
Because it is training you, whether you're intentional about it or not. If you're someone who routinely finds an hour to cycle through YouTube Shorts or TikTok or play a repetitive mobile game, but you constantly catch yourself saying you just can't find the time or the concentration to read a book, well, the time is there. You have the hour.
But concentration is just being spent and exhausted somewhere else.
Right.
And the most encouraging part of all this research is that the damage isn't permanent. As we said, the brain is plastic. You can train it back.
You can recover.
Exactly. Reclaiming your attention doesn't require a heroic effort. It just requires a change in environment. Reading a book is not homework. It shouldn't be about virtue signaling or trying to look smart for a social media post.
Oh, absolutely not.
It is simply a form of entertainment that respects you. It respects you enough to ask your mind to stay in one place long enough for something complicated and beautiful to happen.
It's an open invitation to rebuild that endurance. And on that empowering note, we're going to wrap up today's exploration. If you want to feed your brain a little more and continue building that cognitive endurance, be sure to head over to claireandhoratio.com for more brain candy, debate candy, and some truly phenomenal classic audiobooks.
And as you go about your day, I'd like to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
It's that.
The next time you have a free hour, notice the physical and mental friction you feel when you go to pick up a book versus when you reach for your phone. That friction isn't a sign that you are too tired to read. It's simply the feeling of your brain being asked to break a digital habit and rebuild its cognitive endurance.